All right, guys, let's get to our final speaker. Scott Martin is an author, a serial entrepreneur, and has been in marketing for over 25 years. He's also worked with various international brands to new and local social enterprises, and is currently a strategist and founder of Groundswell Origins and Groundswell Academy, the origin of sustainable growth marketing and groundswelling. Scott, welcome back. How you doing?
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm super stoked to get rolling.
Yeah, brother. Well, let's get into it.
All right. You want me just to get rolling?
Yes, sir.
Okay, guys. Well, thanks everyone for listening. As I always start every one of my talks, I start with aloha. Aloha is near and dear to my heart. As you can see here, looks like I'm in Hawaii, but really I'm in Canada. I'm saying aloha from Canada, but I did spend a lot of time in Hawaii. Lived there for a number of years, and I love the sentiment of I'm here as your equal. I'm here out of respect with you, and I'm here to share with you as best I can to give you the most amount of value with the time that I have. So my first disclaimer is I'll probably be rolling fast again. You might want to be here looking at playing the replay if I can, but they give me hopefully a little bit more time, and I'll be able to get through these concepts. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rolling here. So basically, this is the talk is called Incoming Waves of Change, and we're going to really touch on three things. So three trends shaping business. A Foresight practitioner, what is that? It's really a marketer, what I believe anyways, what a marketer, the modern marketer needs to be. And I'm going to focus on one user case trend. Now, I'm going to do my best to weave in different things, but this is going to be a very different presentation in some ways, because I was listening to even the speaker before, and he was talking about not necessarily telling you what to think or what to do, but really how to think. And I actually really agree to that sentiment. If you really want to be looking at this with the lens of like, how can I tackle these trends and concepts? But I'm going to touch on some of those and kind of look at the different angles with that. So who's this for? So my presentation is for brave brands looking to make impact, or marketers that want to make an impact on the world. So certainly people that have commodities businesses or different type of businesses will draw stuff from this, but it's a direct hit and for these people that are looking to make a difference in the world. So this presentation, as I mentioned, is not what to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do in terms of the trends. I'm going to tell you, or share with you anyways, how to maybe think about it. Think about what to do, how to address these different trends. So to me, that's my disclaimer, is I'm going to show you some methodologies. And the first one is pattern interrupt. Pattern interrupt is what I just did there with the disclaimer. It's like, if you think of marketing, you're an agent of change. Like, I mean, if you're trying to do advertising or marketing, you're interrupting somebody from doing one to the other. But if you look at trends in marketing, the real point of opportunity for you as a marketer to identify these different trends is to look at what's the pattern interrupt and where's the chasm of opportunity. The second is energy. As you know, when I roll up, I've got a ton of energy. Everything is energy. Marketing is energy. Money is energy. If you look at NFTs, they are a form of energy. Also, where do you focus your energy? What do you have energy for? So when you're looking at these trends, you gotta look at, he even mentioned, I think the performance speaker was also talking about the fact that looking at what is trending is terms of what people have a lot of energy for, what they're excited about. That's a form of energy. And focus. This is probably critical. It's like, what do you, so I think when you're here and you're listening, I want you to go, I want you to write this down. What am I going to focus on when you're looking at the different trends that are coming at us? There's so many different things that are changing as a marketer, more than when I even started. It's just like, it's the acceleration and different changes and different opportunities are incredible. But what do you focus on? I want you to think of three things. Are you a good marketer? Do you want to become a great marketer? Or do you want to be an outstanding marketer? The difference between these, between being good and great, is if you're good, you're doing your job. If you're good, you're probably following what is being published and what everyone else is sort of saying. That's like, you're doing good marketing. You're doing right by your company, doing right by yourself. You're following those trends. That's being a good marketer. That's like identifying, all you've done at that point is just identify and listen to what patterns are. But a great marketer differentiates which ones should be a little bit more important and how can we adapt to those. Differentiation. But an outstanding partner the difference is like really 2 millimeters, 2%. It's just a little bit more, but it is everything, which is, can you create patterns by looking at the different trends that are there? So to me, when I want you to look at what I'm going to share with you is really place yourself when you're thinking about where that is, because a lot of times, whether it's, you know what, I know that I could come and I'm going to list off some stuff, but I don't want it to feel like I'm just going, here's what you should do. I want you to take that and go, what's right for me? What can I focus on? And then go from the level there going, what's my unique take on it? I did an incredible podcast with Joe Paluzzi, and we talked about the tilt, which is really, how do you take your marketing, your content, and just slightly adjust it from a different angle and perspective? That is what we're going to talk about on all these different upcoming trends. So to give you a quick little background about me, if I've done a couple other talks with Next MBA. I'm not going to do a deep dive on my background, but basically, if you want, there's a great podcast that I do. I interview some of the top marketing minds in the world and others, called the Groundswell Marketing Podcast, and I've vetted a lot of these concepts with those groups. In fact, that was the research for my book. It's coming out this summer, and this book is really focused on the unseen wave of business growth. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the unseen changes and things that you could look at from a marketer standpoint about how your business could take advantage of it. So where did I learn a lot of this thinking from? Well, that's over 25 years, but there's something I've learned even more with my mentor, Tony Robbins. And I've been a mastermind with Tony Robbins called the Platinum Partnership, and that's afforded me a really great opportunity to really see the different ways of thinking about success and outstanding success, if you will. And recently I attended a thing called Platinum Financial, which was a private conference, which he had individuals like Ray Dalio, which I just got his book right here, Ray Dalio, and Paul Tudor Jones, and a bunch of others. And what they're talking about is the economic cycles, the economic patterns, the economic outlooks. But they were very careful, all of them. And sometimes some of it was really interesting, because I think this also applies to marketing. Is he had one person talking about it's like the end of time for real estate, it's in a bubble, and the other one's going, it's the best of times. And the whole point of having those two disparate things is for you to identify your perspective, your angle, where you fit in, because for one person, it might be very not advantageous to be in that market, and someone else it would be. And I really had a really exciting one when we had Gary Vee come on, and he talked about NFTs. And it was really interesting to me when he was on stage, and it's like, when he was talking about, he's talking about, I want you to do just one thing, just start researching, start identifying, get yourself into it. And to me, this is the best advice anyone can give you about any one of these things, is don't just believe what people are saying. It's just, NFTs is really, is it artwork? It's so much more than that when you start diving into it. And he really describes the best thing to do is do 100 hours of research into it. But the funny thing is before when I was first learning about NFTs, I did my 100 hours of research, but I didn't do it until after I had this bad experience, which was, maybe some of you guys have seen these things, which is VFriends. And I had to break a bad habit. I'm going to be really honest with you. I'm going to be totally transparent with you that you know what, I have totally fallen down in terms of my own thinking. And this was a real hard reset for me. It was a pattern interrupt, because I'm actually an alumni. I've known Gary Vee. I'm a 4D program alumni, and I got invited early on to the NFTs, his VFriends. And I remember going on the live webinar thing, and he was talking about it, and there was a big lead up to it and all stuff. And I'm like, I'm not giving you, and I can't remember how much it was, a couple $100 or something, to buy these VFriends. And he was giving us like, this is the inside track, this is gonna be the next biggest thing, way before anyone else even knew about publicly, right? He was having this discussion with us, and I said no. And I think, I'm not sure how long ago it was, and I found out, and I saw that VFriends, somebody had sold one for like $30,000 or something. And I was like, whoa, pattern interrupt. I need to put some focus. I need to learn and understand what this is. I'm clearly not understanding something. And so what I want to say here is, this is my disclaimer. If you're showing up to any talk, anything, make sure you're not bringing in your bias. I brought in my bias. I was like, these are janky art things. What are things about? I totally had a bias for it. I also didn't look at the patterns. I was hearing about it more and more importantly, I didn't do my first 100 hours of research. What I did was I didn't jump on it, even when he was a mentor, somebody who's world renowned. I have everything aligning for me to make a decision and take advantage of this, and I didn't. So I'd say the same thing with all the different speakers that you hear from, all the teachers in the NEXT MBA program. Don't come in with a bias, look for the patterns and do the research, and then make your decision. And I will never make this mistake again. It was a very, very costly mistake. Let me share something else with you. Success in business is 80% psychology and 20% mechanics. So is marketing. If you look at everybody focuses on what is the trend. So many people are spending, and you're going to see my presentation. It is going to be weighted like this for a very particular reason, because you as marketers, the best thing I can offer you to give you value when you leave here is to leave with a set of tools to go in with lenses and different ways of looking at things so that you can address marketing and be a game changer, be an effector of change. So let's start in the first thing that I learned with Tony Robbins was human needs. So how many of you really do understand and actually have thought about, this is a filter, the human need filter. When you're looking at these trends, you're looking at NFTs, you're looking at DOA, you're looking at a voice technology or whatever. You really want to look at from the filter of human needs. And here they are. So significance. Now, I found this one interesting because when he had mentioned that some of the prices based on demand were based on, they feel significant. If I own a Bored Ape, I can put that as my profile. That is about significance. If you have 3 of these attributes, you have, and it basically like what you could call an addiction, or you could call it like almost like raving fans, however you want to call it, whether it's an addiction to something great or not great from working out, or if it's something that's like I'm absolutely must have. So you look at these significance. People need to feel important, that they want to feel that their life has meaning, it's meaningful. Certainty. People want to know that they can count on it. That's where, you're looking at the elements of value that we talked about in Groundswelling. I'd go back to that. I'm going to touch on it later in this presentation, but people need and want certainty. Just think of yourself, like you'd like to have certainty that you're going to get these kind of results. But if you're always getting the same thing, if you're having a steak dinner every day, eventually that's not going to be so amazing. You're going to want a little variety. That's called uncertainty. People like a little variety. So if you had showed up and they knew that the exact thing I was going to talk, if you guys knew the exact thing I was going to talk about at every talk and the same thing, it wouldn't be very interesting. But hopefully you guys who love uncertainty, like go when Scott's rolling stage, I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm super interested because also the next one is love and connection. I want to show that I have a connection with you. I'm just like you. I just happen to have more years and have some of these tools. People want connection and community. You look at all these apps and trends, where does that fit in? You look at NFTs, they are like connection because you share, you're part of the same Bored Apes. You're also part of the Discord server, whatever, communities, the rise of virtual communities, and growth. That's a really important thing. You're seeing now that so many people, they want to have a product, but they also want to have personal growth. So you're going to see an example where a company that's a product-based company that touches on connection and growth. And I wanted to pick that one specifically to go, it doesn't matter if you're a product or service, you can touch on any one of these human needs. And the last is contribution. And the ultimate failure in business is the failure of contribution. If you think of success, what are you giving to the world? And this is where I think a huge impact is going to be on blockchain and NFTs, is smart contracts being able to siphon out some of the transaction value and giving to the world to make the world a better place. Like doing good is good for business. A big part of my philosophy with Groundswelling. So human needs. Let's talk about the 10 trends shaping marketing. Now, I kind of felt like I wanted to, I was going to stretch these out and give the examples and go in detail. And I thought, I know how long I can go on. So I thought I'm going to share the trends right away and then weave them in later. So first of all, from efficiency to mindful, right? I really could say efficiency to later, I might say like more empathetic, but I like mindful as a word, right? Efficiency is we're making decisions based on, is it effective, is it efficient, is it profitable? Mindful is sometimes things aren't necessarily profitable, but they're long-term, they're going to be profitable. You take a look some of the decisions that Patagonia has done over the years, not selling on Black Friday. That was a mindful decision. It wasn't exactly the most efficient, profitable decision, but on a bigger thing, they were connecting with people that shared the same values. That was being mindful. Cooperative we're moving from cooperative to collaborative. I'm cooperating with you. These are strategic alliances. Well, but the blockchain, you're going to be collaborative. And you think about marketing, you may create a cooperative with like an influencer, but when you become collaborative, when you share in the revenue, and we're thinking far beyond just like the affiliate programs, that is where things are shaping. This is where it's shaping towards. And I won't touch very long in this one because I did almost a real in-depth in my groundswelling talk on the next MBA, which is buying to buying in. So people no longer want to buy from you, they want to buy into you, because there's more than buying the product. It's like, what's behind the product? What else are you doing with the money? What impact are you making on the world? And this one might be slightly controversial, but I have a different lens. Is artificial to human? Is there's so much focus on artificial intelligence. There's so much focus on mass production, perfection, creating all these things where I'm seeing a trend in terms of people wanting things to be more human. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. Bound energy to bound, it should be bound energy to unbound. Sorry, there's a typo there. So bound energy, let's think of this marketing trend. Bound energy is Hyatt hotels. Unbound energy is Airbnb. Bound energy is taxis. Unbound energy is Uber. If you understand we remember I said energy at the beginning. If you understand unbound energy, then if you really think about that, I will tell you blockchain and specifically NFTs are unbound energy. The potentiality of it is incredible. Communities is unbound energy. It's energy that actually creates continual expanding sort of abundance of conversation, energy, whatever, right? To me, that is like, it's releasing and going into a different world. And when we talk about later, I'm going to share with you an exact example how marketing can be applied with NFTs, because I know some of you were asking for that. And it really ties in this bound versus unbound. Trusting to trust not required. This is a big one. I'm going to do a deep dive in this, but I'll just touch on this one point. Is right now, we are trusting people. We are trusting things. But in the future, we won't have to even trust, because in the blockchain, the transaction will just exist. I don't have to even trust you anymore. It's already implied. It's already transparently embedded in the transaction and the marketing. From customer to investor. Right now, we have customers. As marketers, we're going, well, we have customers. But investors are people that invest in our business. Well, you know what? From a personal brand to even businesses, with the blockchain, the different things and trends that are happening, customers are turning into investors. You think of even buying a product and them going, I know that I want to buy that shoes, but the fact that you're giving those shoes, and for every pair I buy, some pairs of shoes go to somebody that's in a needed country, that is me turning into an investor. I'm actually investing in the product because I'm investing on the value. Beyond the product, I'm actually interested in sharing values. You share my values, I'm going to buy from you. And lastly, interruption to anticipation. This to me is the promise of personalization. It's always been, right? Which has been the promise of AI to some degree. But what I mean by this is from interruption of going, hey, you need to be marketing, here's what we offer, to I'm so drawn to this and I can't wait. I don't even know what's going to happen, but I know that I want to do it. And I'll give you a little example later with that, but that one's going to be maybe a deeper dive for a later talk, because I think that that's going to be the transformation economy is one of the concepts that I think is going to change the world. So let's take a step and how do you actually look at these? Well, I look at this as, if you're a modern marketer, here's the attributes that I want you to kind of do a little checklist. Or maybe look at, how can I become this way? Or make this a way of thinking, going from how am I looking at this? So start with mindful. Mindful is really taking thought and time about being empathetic to the customer journey, to being mindful about the approach and processes that you take. Empathetic to the customer, understanding their point of view. This is going to be the critical factor for really connecting with audiences, because those marketers that aren't empathetic to their needs, their wants, and their human needs, going back to human needs, you're going to miss it. Creative and critical thinker. This is where this lens I'm going to show you today is a way of looking at it and looking at problem solving from a creative standpoint. Critical thinking, like you think of all the different ways that some of the NFTs, I'm speaking on NFTs during this case, is, look at how you can creatively address these and be a critical thinker. Don't just accept what is there. Start creating patterns and ideas on what you can do. And that takes innovation, testing, and trying different new things. The next is Foresight practitioner. Let me take a sip. This is interesting. I love this when I first heard this. Just recently, my buddy Dave, he mentioned it again. I'm like, man, I love that word. Because really, I want you as a modern marketer, if you're going to be a modern marketer, I want you to be a Foresight practitioner. It means along this process, this is the blueprint for you to start having a little foresight. Foresight doesn't mean that I have some sort of crystal ball. What it means is there's patterns, and having foresight to helping your business navigate all the different changes and things makes you an extremely outstanding marketer. Being collaborative. How can you collaborate with other individuals? Finding mutual ground. I believe that the future network and the promise of blockchain is massive and rapid collaboration. Sustainable growth strategist. I did a whole talk on sustainable growth marketing. I'll let that speak for itself, but really looking at what you do in marketing for your business, how can it be sustainable? Asking yourself this one question: is this sustainable? Ask yourself that all the time, because that is going to lead you different things to go, it's not sustainable. So you're basically going, I'm okay with that. That can be fine too. But just that fact that you're aware of that, you don't fool yourself, and you really kind of have that thread line of going, is this sustainable for business? Because otherwise you get a false positive, and that's a long hour talk I did already. Follow the energy. Remember the beginning? Follow your energy. How many times have you done a task or marketing? And I think it's really important to test and try everything. I've done things I didn't have a lot of energy for, but I've also done things that I didn't think I had energy for, and I realized that I did. Like creatively, I ran my agency for years. I had hired creative directors. Well, I realized that I have a ton of energy for the creative, and I now do tons of creative. It's something I discovered because I wanted to make sure I test and try, and I'm always getting my fingers and stuff. So follow the energy also in the trends. Follow the energy where people's energy and time. You can tell where the energy is by where money is going, where people are spending their money. The fact that they're spending these ridiculous dollars in these NFTs is where energy is going. There's something there. Success leaves clues. And lastly, never ending experiment and testing. Always be testing. Don't even everything I'm going to show you today or anyone else shows you, try it yourself. Test for yourself. Okay. But here's 5 balancing acts. They're not versus each other in the sense that they're against each other. It's that they're 2 different concepts that sometimes you can go between the 2. So really, it's like, are you managing an audience? Are you building an audience? Or are you building a community? They have different attributes. Are we scaling, or are we creating intimacy? They can sometimes feel on opposite spectrums, but you can slide between the 2, or sometimes there's balance in there. Human versus systems. Too much automation can feel unhuman, but sometimes you need systems to be able to scale. Subscriber versus stakeholder. Big one. The subscriber economy is here, but the stakeholder economy is emerging. Transactional versus transformational. Are you doing a transaction, or are you changing the way that they think, that they look at, I will never buy a cup of coffee from anyone else again because your cup of coffee is the best in the world. So these balancing acts are little, I think they're the 5 that I picked that kind of like really speak to what's happening now in this moment. And there's another, which is driving innovation. And this is classic, whether you're creating art or you're doing a service or product. This is it's something that drives innovation. Is people want things fast, cheap, or great. And you've heard you can have it fast and great, but you can't have it cheap, or cheap and great, but you won't have it fast. Like, you take any one of those 2. But the truth is that innovation is driving to help, because basically human need is, I want it all. I want it all. So businesses are trying to drive, how can we do all of those things, right? The difference is, of course, with cheap is maybe cheap is also where brand fits in, where you actually are your desire or your sensitivity to pricing is completely different, because you want it so badly. So maybe cheap is maybe not in the case of a brand that's trying to build luxury brand, but it could be cheap in terms of the time that you invest. So I've talked about this in my last talk, and I want to just touch on this, which is, if you want to be a modern marketer, you're looking at these lenses, I view the world, if you're a business that's why I said at the beginning, this is for you if you want to make impact, is if you're doing a transaction at this elements of value, these are all the attributes of transaction. You're just moving to take action. That's like a transaction, like buying ice cream. It's like they happen to be the right place, the right time on Thursday, I got it. So it's internal, I don't really share that. But if you change from me buying a PC to Apple, and you've changed the way that I look at computing for myself, then I'll probably communicate to tell other people like, hey, this is something that's great if they ask you, right? But when you transform somebody, they're compelled to enroll. This is called a growth loop. When you transform somebody and change the way that they think, do, and act, and I believe that some of the trends that we're going to talk about are transformational, it's going to accelerate because people are going to be compelled to enroll. They already are. If you notice people are doing NFTs, they're sharing at a rapid rate, right? So this is a pattern. And this pattern is also, this particular case is a pattern of a seismic pattern. And that's the topic of our talk today. That seismic pattern is this tidal shift. There's two tectonic plates that are kind of rubbing each other, creating this, like, if you think of a tidal shift, it's in between tides. It's a soupy mess. We're in between these two things. These two things is, I believe we're leaving the age of attention and we're shifting into this age of trust. And what does that look like? It means we're leaving this like, look at me, grab attention era and connect with me to take action. Now, what does that really mean? It's like, if you think of attention, how we got here is if you think of the content arms race, or you think of advertising, more ads, more followers, more likes, that's about getting attention. Trust is about a deeper sense of connection with you. It's buying in. That's buy. You got my attention, but you didn't buy into my attention. And attention is really important because the truth is attention is completely dropping. The attention span in 2000 was 12 seconds. It's now 8.25 seconds. In fact, it's less than the attention of a goldfish. How, like, as a marketer, you're looking at these trends or looking at different things going, how do you actually make impact on the world when you have this low attention span? So you got these two competing things, attention and trust, and sort of coming together. And I would ask you, is this true? This is my first lesson of having a critical mind about these trends and different things is, whatever it is, I want you to torpedo it. I do it all the time. Every idea I got, I blow it up. I get excited about it. I'm super optimistic about it. And then I go, what is my blind spot? What is inaccurate about this? What am I over optimistic about? And the funny thing about the attention span is that all seemed really true and great, right? Except for the attention paradox is that science is actually, there's a science behind why we binge watch. There's also the case where we actually have an overabundance of attendance and attention. What makes that? So if when you understand this sort of shift in marketing, this is a marketing mindset. It's a trend. It's not a technology trend, but it's the thing underneath that changes technology. If you think of Netflix, how did it create this new attention of binge watching? It happened from Netflix because of one thing. You're paying them a subscription so you're not interrupted. Let me say it again. You're paying to not get interrupted. Why? It's annoying. Interruption marketing is failing. People are willing to pay to go around marketing. So that is what you're up against. And technology is there. There's different apps and stuff. All the things that are happening is marketing, the interruption marketing is becoming increasingly more difficult. And at the same time, attention is collapsing, except for attention is there and it grabs attention in the right circumstances. But how many of you have been fooled, right? With marketing advertising? Many of us have. And one of them would say is great trailers. How many of you have ever seen a trailer and you're like, oh my God, I got to watch this movie. I did for this one, Phantom Menace. I remember it being like, oh my gosh, it's been so long since Star Wars came out. The trailer was insanely good. It was like provocative, and it was really not a great movie in my opinion. And there's many times that's the case. Think of the last time you got burned with watching a movie. Well, what do you do? What do you do after you get burned watching a movie? You've lost trust, right? So what do? We go for trust insurance. We go to, whether you're buying a business or watching a movie, you start looking at reviews, right? And I look at, IMDb, I'll look at different reviews, and I've even gotten burned on IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes. And so if you seen a review, you did your homework, right? You did your homework and you're like, oh, but it wasn't quite what you wanted. So, but it's still, reviews are something that's actually there's definitely an impact. Like there's a lot of stats that say, again, critical eye, a lot of stats are saying reviews, that's what people want. But this is weird. People don't trust negative. Why don't people trust negative reviews online? So it's like, can you trust reviews or not trust reviews, right? It's something you want to think about. There's so much, like there's these two pieces that are coming together for you to really think about. And have you think about this? This one kind of stings. As a marketer, we're like at the bottom of we're become the least trusted people, and for good reason in a lot of ways, because there's an overabundance of overselling and not the under delivering pretty much, right? And with those, like if you use the analogy of the trailers, that's a bang on example. You know, it's like, oh, the trailer sold the movie, but the movie wasn't very good. So I'm not, you know, you wasted 2 hours of your time. Word of mouth. At the end of the day, if you look at the shift that's happening, and we're leaving this age of attention and we're moving this trust, part of that was what's happened with mistrust. Part of that's what's happened is we want to go to people we know. So if I wanted to see a movie now and someone actually goes, Scott, I know you and I know you like this movie, I'm not even worrying about IMDb. I will skip over that. I will go and watch the movie. And that's the same with business, you know, recommendation of people I know. That's why community and some of these apps and technology, and you even find with the blockchain and with NFTs, word of mouth is actually tied into it in so many different ways. And hopefully I get some time to do a little bit deep dive in that. But the funny thing is that marketers come and go, word of mouth, it's the future. It's actually, it's the old fashioned word of mouth. Like it feels like we've gone full circle back to more human. And so to me, that is an interesting trend. So if you look at the age of attention, let's talk about the age of trust, okay? Well, the darkest hour is just before the dawn. I'm sorry to report. Right now, we're in the cycle of mistrust. And, you know, not the circle of trust, we're outside the circle, but, you know, the cycle of mistrust or the circle of mistrust is there's so much stats out there. And you just ask yourself, you know, fake news. You ask yourself about, you know, is that real? You know, as you look at so many different things that are coming at us, our walls are up. So as a marketer, in this era of mistrust, when you're looking at these apps and trends, how are you going to really like think about this and have you really think about this one piece? Because I believe the trust economy is coming. And if you really understand why people mistrust, you say, I'm going to really understand what that is and how we can actually combat that, you'll really find your way into how these trends and you fit into them. Because one of the things I'll caution you is I believe there'll be, just like the hype cycle, there'll be a collapse of NFTs. People suddenly, I don't trust them anymore. That's like throwing the baby with the bathwater. So I'm just going to share with you this Edelman Trust Barometer. You can go download this online if you Google it. And they went through the 22 years of trust, right? And if you look here, it's like, you know, trust shifts from authorities to peers, right? Peer to peer, human. Business is more trusted than government and media. Trust, then you go in 2 years later, trust in business plummets. I want you to look at those three things, and that is a pendulum swing. It goes back and forth. These trends it happens all the time. Battle for the truth. You know, now we're business most trusted now last year, but right now we're in this cycle of mistrust. We're in this middle area where we're in this soup. We're in the tidal shift right now. Let's do a little deep on that. 58% buy or advocate for brands based on their beliefs and values. Okay, this is in this report, right? 58% buy or advocate for brands based on their beliefs or values. Wait a minute, I thought it was price. I thought it was placement. I thought it was all these different things. Things are shifting. One of the trends that everyone's focused on, NFTs and blockchain, you got to focus on what is the human behavior and the economic levers that are existing. Next one, 60% choose to work based on their beliefs and values. The Great Resignation. Wow, that's actually how people are using their own time. They want to choose to work based on, again, beliefs and values. Interesting, huh? Every time I do, I want to go, yeah, there's something here. There's a pattern here, right? 64% invest based on their beliefs and values. Remember I said customer invest? Well, that's going to kind of have a little bit of an interesting intersection, but you got to follow the money. Where money goes is where the focus, where they are investing your money is based on beliefs or values. That is an important trend, not the one you're maybe thinking about. Interesting study that came up with David Allison. He did a study in 152 languages, 500,000 surveys around the world, and he did the first ever research demonstrating that it's no longer about demographics, it's about value graphics, that people buy based on values. This is so important, as this, like, I can't even stress it enough. I want you to really like take a moment and think about this, because if you take this lens, if this is true, then look at NFTs, Clubhouse, different platforms. Understand why these patterns are existing, because that human behavior is the underlying trend that's affecting change and going to affect where you can have a foresight to go where things are going next. And if you want to listen to a little bit more background about what the methodology and the details of it, it's season 2, episode 8 with David Allison. And it's basically really doing a deep dive on why that is. I don't need to do it because you can listen to the whole hour and that'll give you a massive background in that. Lastly, globally, 88% of institutional investors, they have the same scrutiny of financial considerations. This is so important. This is such a huge trend shift. The same considerations of business performance and business value, right? Brand value, business performance combined together, creating a valuation, is now environmental, social, and governance values. This is such an important component. Trust is the new currency, you guys. Sure, that is, if you think of blockchain or Bitcoin is about trust. It's about non-manipulation. It's if you look at the deeper meaning, I think that hopefully somebody's got a light bulb going on right now. And there's a great episode 23, about trust and new currency with Don Peppers, my mentor. And really, if you think about trust, think of it as extreme trust. I had, when you're proactive, so at the very end of this, I talk about transformational. If you're, I remember an Apple, I actually tried to order a movie and it went, hey, you already own this. That is being proactive. It's actually anticipating me not buying the same movie twice. That created even more trust for me, going, I can click any movie. I don't have to go and check my library. I know that I'm not going to just inadvertently buy an extra movie. That to me is embedding trust processes, systems in creating a deeper level of connection with me and that brand. That's where loyalty is. So the underlying drivers are values, trust, and sustainability. It's sustainable when you have customers that don't want to leave, right? I would offer build trust, not attention. Why? Because you're moving to where it's going. The shift is happening. Start building in that direction, okay? So what are one of the ways that you can build trust and not attention? Well, back to that study is CEOs should be personally visible when discussing public policy and external stakeholders to work their company has done to benefit society. When considering a job, I expect the CEO to speak publicly about controversial social political issues that I care about. What I see here on the surface, it looks like, well, we want leaders that actually are out there publicly. I would say no. That what I'm seeing is this personal brand intersection. What people no longer believe necessarily on its own is the brand itself. They want human, personal brand trust with individuals in the brand, leadership, accountability, transparency. That's why you're seeing more and more companies of employees that are going this great resignation, or they're basically going, you need to change or we're walking out, is because they want leadership. That's what you want as a leader in marketing, as if you're a founder, if you're a business owner, CEO that's listening to this, you want to look at and lean into what I believe is one of the biggest trends happening already. If this isn't a future trend, we're in the trend. And in fact, I'm actually going to be doing a course called Building a Personal Brand, and I'll share with you a couple of insights that you could take away and write these down. If you want to make an impact on the world and be on point with all the trends that are going on, these are the 3 things you need to think about. In your personal brand, what's your purpose? What's your why? Simon Sinek. If you're not clear about your purpose, people care about the intentionality, the mindfulness, what are you really about what you're doing? For me, it's about my purpose is to be a groundswell for good, generating waves of change that transform into a tsunami of stoke. I'm really clear about my purpose. Like, I want to help you guys become incredible marketers that are doing good in the world. Passion. Is there any doubt I have passion? If I drop an F-bomb, it's not because I like to swear, it's because I get really passionate. I'm passionate about surfing. I'm passionate about nature. I'm passionate about waves. I'm passionate about finding patterns in nature. I'm passionate about being a Foresight practitioner, understanding patterns and helping other people not just go, hey, follow my lead. I'm going, here's how I figured it out, so that you can learn the patterns yourself. And lastly, point of view. This could be one of the most important things to say in this talk. No matter your brand, a personal brand, if you don't have a point of view in this world, you're ignored. Everyone else is trying to appeal to everyone else in just a generic sense. And if you think of this point of view, what gets kind of clouded here is, do you remember, anyone remember Black Lives Matter? And then suddenly everybody had, that Black Lives Matter, on their pages and posting. And then something new came up and that no longer was there. The point of view if you're going to anchor a point of view on a topic, on a trend, you need to anchor into it and be ongoing with it. A point of view that's sort of like following the trend, that's not a point of view. You're just underscoring a trend. A point of view is something more sustainable, something that is more deeper. It's about values. It's also ties in your purpose. My point of view on the world is that sustainable growth marketing, creating exponential returns with decreasing costs, is possible. In fact, I think you can market without marketing. I love the quote, advertising is tax you pay for being unremarkable. I believe that you can build businesses that word of mouth creates a sustainable growth loop. That is my point of view in the world, and that's what's different about me. My other point of view is simply this. An underlying driver is add humans. We're going into an era where there's more automation, more systems, more AI. I believe the future is going to be, this is like almost like it's sort of like verified. It'll be human verified conversation. How many of you had an email? Let's talk about energy. You had an email and they tried to go, hey, I forgot to send you this. And it had that headline that was like, oh, hey, one more thing. But really you saw it was an automation email. You knew the energy of it, everything you knew about it was like not real. And something about when we want to see content, we want to see the human aspect, the imperfection of it. We've gone from perfection to imperfection. That makes it more human, I believe. And you're seeing businesses and brands actually make their commercials almost like with imperfections because they're trying to make it more human. Does that make sense for marketing? That is a trend. So think about that. And why is that? It's because trust is really fragile. And the reason it's fragile is people have their walls up. Even the businesses now, they're starting to go, well, you're just trying to fake it. You're trying to pretend that it's a Zoom. I saw one ad that was an insurance company that they faked a Zoom call, right? Like they did it to make it so it was really connecting with you. So think of this. Trust times connection equals action. Do you understand my problem? Empathy. Can I trust you is really at the end of the day, like what are the elements that create trust? To what degree do I have an affinity for you? What your purpose, your why? Those are the things in your personal brand and your business that matter to help me take action on following me or whatever. I can't believe how many of you, before I started, I did a whole bunch of LinkedIn invites from this. I'm honored, that you would trust me with being able to honor me with connecting with me on LinkedIn. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. But I think there's the stage that we're moving into is something different, which is, it's not about taking action, it's a reaction. And so if you think of what thoughts can be generated with my content or my business or my brand to evoke trust, and what response can I have from this call to action, this connection? Well, this is where I think like NFTs and different things, the trust, you don't no longer even have to need the trust. There's if it's connection on values and it's something that I believe in, I'm just going to react because I can trust that it's going to follow through, and I'll explain later. This is my statement. I quoted myself. I think I saw a meme going around which was like, hey, you shouldn't be quoting yourself on your own web page or something. So I shouldn't be quoting myself in my own presentations, but I'm going to do it. Okay. We're leaving attention and shifting into attraction and then evolving into anticipation. The shifting into attraction and anticipation, those are trust. A deeper level of trust is anticipation. If I'm anticipating what you're doing for me, then I have even a deeper trust because I'm almost looking forward to whatever you're doing to me. But if you're attracting me, that's just some trust that I'm actually attracted to you. So again, this still has to do with leaving attention, moving into trust, but there's these two elements, attraction marketing and anticipation marketing. And I'll really kind of dive on that at the very, very end, but it's going to weave in together with this. So how do we identify market trends that are ideal for your brand? Okay. So we take those, whoa, I just lost my little side screen there. Whoops. Okay, there we go. So the underlying drivers are economic and human. I'm simplifying it, but that really is what it is, right? Good, fast, or cheap, the collapse of attention, those are the factors that you're kind of looking at. So I'm going to help you right now to give you sort of a real breakdown of how I view the world and how I look at these different things. That's Foresight practitioner. It's not a crystal ball. Frankly, it's just follow the system. It's like many of the things are just simply following a process. And I learned this from Tony Robbins and many others, which is number one, pattern recognition. So pattern recognition is I'm identifying what the pattern is. I'm seeing that this new trend is NFTs. I'm identifying it. The next is differentiation, pattern utilization, going out, trying a NFT, getting a sense of it. How are these different? What is different about them? What makes them good or bad? What can fit with my business? And the last is personalizing it, pattern creation. When you're creating patterns, so I'm at a point in my career where I've seen the patterns, I've identified the patterns, I've worked at every possible topic of market you can possibly imagine. I've applied it, I've done it, I've tested it, I still am. But pattern creation is now I'm actually creating new concepts, but they're based on a bedrock of these things. And I'm just sharing with you that because if you're on a journey to become a better marketer, this is the type of stuff, the way of thinking that allow you to go into, like the gentleman before, he was trying to get you to go, I'm showing you, I'm identifying this pattern. You need to go and differentiate. And the next step is for you to actually create something on your own to make it your own. Okay, little sip, and then I'm going to the next thought. Wait a minute. What happens when the patterns tell a different story? Oh, snap. Okay, so patterns, but not all patterns are that obvious. Survivor's bias. This is a great and interesting sort of thought for you to really think about. This was based on during World War I and II, when the planes would come back from being battered and in battle, they would look at the different damages of the plane and they would go, oh, we need to reinforce those because those are damaged. And then I think it was, I'm looking at Abraham Wald. I want to give him the credit for this. He's a mathematician and he goes, actually, we're looking at it the wrong way. We did not account for the data that's not here because the planes that didn't come back, they've been the ones that didn't come back, they didn't have these holes. We don't know because we don't have the planes. So we need to reinforce the areas that the damage doesn't exist, the exact opposite. Sure enough, he was right. This is my point I want to make with you is don't just look at the data you're being presented with. Don't just look at what's so obvious. Look at what's not there. Look at the survivor bias. What patterns are not emerging that you don't see? This can be a really powerful lens. This is, again, just another lens. You want to look at different things that are coming. I love this quote, and I'm from Canada and I don't play hockey, but I love the quote. It's like a good hockey player knows where the puck is. A great hockey player knows where the puck is going to be. Well, you know what an outstanding hockey player would be is a pool player because there's only one puck. The world that you live in and I live in is not as simple as one trend, one thing, right? It's a series of them. These are all economies and different trends and different things, and they intersect and play with each other, right? It can be really interdependent and really important. You understand the relationships between them. So I'm going to take out of the universe of some of them that we're going to kind of zero in. And there's so many. You can think of what are all the different patterns that Scott's going to show up with. Well, this is the ones that are in my direct visibility for today, and I'm going to zero in even more because of the time. If I had 2 hours, I would probably cover many of them. Oh my goodness. I just got a Darth Vader sound that says I've got to get to the closer to the end of my talk. So you want to look at that as being a foresight practitioner is you want to look at variable versus fixed, trends versus truths, okay? So I love this quote because you can basically look at the past and you think, well, the future can't be predicted. But if you look at the past, then you go, oh yeah, there's patterns, like a pendulum, right? If you look at this isn't a pattern that it just showed that we went from 1800 to the Renaissance, and it's called pendulum theory. And pendulum theory is that, in effect, just like if you look in the United States politics, you know, it's like Republicans to Democrats, it's like this pendulum theory. You go from one spectrum to the next. And if you think of automation, everybody's so hot on automation and AI, I believe you need to be looking at where's it going next. If it's 100% humans, the opposite of automation, is that what's going to be happening next? I don't know. But in the middle of this, if you look at a pendulum, there's some things that do not change. They stay in between, which is truths, human behavior, universal truths. Pay attention to those. So the underlying drivers this is in my book, is basically humans versus automation. Well, the truth is, I actually think they both can coexist, and that's like, it's finding that balance. Remember that balance I said between the two? It's not one or way. It's like, how can you find the fit in there? And I found an ironic point when I was actually searching on the share economy, which is all about sharing and connecting with people. In the same search, the algorithm of Amazon said, who can you trust? It's on the opposite spectrum. It's actually, even in search, when people are looking at one versus the other, if I care about privacy, then the other person cares about a transparency or whatever, right? So right now it's 2002. These are the different things that you got to think about and where that is. So as a perspective, you got to look at your perspective or the people that's teaching you, what is their perspective? And then maybe even change your direction. So player A may look at this shot and look at all of those different trends, and this person's got a completely different angle, right? You also should, as a marketer, look from different angles at what's your perspective change? What's the strategy change that you could take with it? And what are the changes that are happening? And this is really the unseen wave of business growth my book talks about. And you can, when the book comes out in the summer, you can get a little more detail on that. But really, it's about this open sea of opportunity. And so what are these incoming waves? The ones that I'm going to zero in on because of time is creator economy, trust economy, and transformation economy. So these three waves of impact, they have some attributes to each one of them. And if you think of any trend, this is called the Gartner's hype cycle, is almost every technology goes through this like massive, and right now the NFTs are at the top of the hype cycle, and they go into the trough of disillusionment. I love the name, by the way, slope of enlightenment, and then off the plateau of productivity. So let's talk about the creator economy. The creator economy, if you listen to episode 56 with Gina, she started this manifesto from independence to dependence, dependence to independence. And this creator economy is that there's an uprising of individuals. And this is really important as a marketer, really understanding this, because whether you're working with an agency, working with multiple people, or even as a business and a brand, the creator economy is going to create a massive amount of disruption in your business. And if you look at even a personal brand, there's a creator coin. So that means, again, you're going to become potential investors in individuals and individual brands on the blockchain. This is an example. It's called creator coins. So what if you look at the creator economy, and I don't have time to actually break down, but I could go through each one of these on how it applies to human needs. And that's how I want you to look at it. It's going, when you see something about the creator economy and the effects, go through this filter. Is it significant? Certainty, uncertainty, growth, contribution. Look at it from these different things. What is it moving from? So if you think of creator economy, it's going from artificial to human, because it's now humanizing people. It's basically becoming unbound, so people can have more control and independence in their life. Just because of time, I'm breezing through that a little bit. So sound, voice, and audio. This is what I'm going to kind of anchor in on and kind of really do a deep dive, so you at least get one sense of how this applies to one trend. So I believe that social audio is going to be a massive, massive trend to pay attention to. And a couple of them that are under there is sonic branding, voice search, smart speakers. There's a bunch of them, but I just wanted to touch on it. In fact, I'm so committed to it that it's the topic of my next book. I've got 4 books planned, and I'm doing one every year after the Groundswell releases, and I'm doing research on the rising tide of voice, sound, and audio. And one of the things that you want to think about is there's category trend, which is social audio, and there's platform trend. And this is really important. If you look at the platform trend, you could go back and look at trust and connection, value and sustainable. That's basically like, if you look at social audio, it's like trust and connection is great because you hear people's voice, you make connection. It's valuable and sustainable because you can just show up and it's so easy to be able to do. Frictionless and scale, you can actually show up and reach hundreds of people in one talk. So it's like, it has all the elements of that underlying human driver, which is what I call intimacy at scale in my book. Really important. So let's look at this a little bit. If you look at this, these are sort of the hype cycle. I'm going to share with you this. This is Clubhouse. So in February 2021, I was like in Clubhouse, and it was blowing up. I'd spent so much time, and I was there for like 4 months, created one of the largest Clubhouse groups and advertising marketing. And now I kind of totally, I kind of got off it actually for a number of months because it wasn't really sustainable. It was taking a lot of time, but now Clubhouse is kind of moving this plateau of productivity. But you'll notice over here, there's LinkedIn. I'm going to get to it in a second. And right now, Clubhouse has figured out going, what made people leave the platform? So you learn the productivity is like, we're figuring it out. But I believe that LinkedIn, this is my hack, and this is my big insight for this particular topic, is I think LinkedIn isn't going to go through the trough of disillusionment, because one of the main factors that it went through the trough for Clubhouse was getting people on, engaging people at a business level, direct communication messaging. LinkedIn has all those things. Twitter, I don't think is going to be able to cross the chasm such as that, but that is what my belief is. I believe that I'm a hard trend focus on LinkedIn for their audio platform that they're launching. And if you want just the topic of crossing the chasm, I'm going to be doing an episode. I just finished recording it with Jeffrey Moore. He's the author of Crossing the Chasm. If you understand chasm theory, read that book. So this category of social audio in the spring of 2023, I believe is going to go, like by then we're going to be in the, right now is the time to be really paying really close attention to audio. And if you look at, as soon as LinkedIn launches, they're launching it with audio, a video version, and you'll be able to connect with your audience, direct message, set up invites, set up, to me, if you already have an audience there, or if you want to be found and you know who people are. One of the problems with Clubhouse is I don't know who they are in business. So as a business platform of doing business and for marketing, I'm encouraging you to pay really close attention to this. So let's quickly take the filter that I had on here. This case, it's like audience versus community. It kind of does both, but it's incredible for audience. Scale and intimacy. It has great scale and intimacy because you're actually having that same intimacy I have in Clubhouse, and I'm able to scale because I already have like a user base in there and already my contacts. It's definitely human. It's not only stakeholder, subscriber. I'm already subscribing to LinkedIn. And I think it's transformational because I think people are going to be able to transform the way that they do business communications. The next is trust economy. Trust economy is the blockchain. So if you think of trust on the blockchain is you don't need to have trust to do a transaction of land titling. You did used to when you had a lawyer, but when someone puts money on the blockchain, it's the transaction's done, right? Well, the same is with, you're seeing Gary Henderson, he's the one that started this draft tower, is he explains, and this will be the one that someone's going to go, well, someone asked the question before, how do you actually see this in marketing? And hopefully can be able to, this will be one really important one that I kind of get to a deeper level on, which is this. What he's doing, what he's expressing with this is if you own, which I do, 5 drafts, you're going to be able to, the blockchain just knows and gives me access. It's really about access. And I get access to him. I get access to different levels. If I have 3, I get different access. So no longer do I have the systems or the process they used to have to administering subscribers and did you pay and follow through. It changes. It's automatically there. And he gave the example of this. He had 2 people join to learn from him how to basically do an NFT and launch their own NFT and Creator Coin. They paid, I think he said, I think they paid like $3,000 or something. And they sold their position that took them to be able to do that for $9,000. They learned from him. Remember bound energy, unbound energy? Bound energy is I bought a subscription from you. Unbound energy is I buy it, I'm an investor, the value went up, I told the people I sold it, I made money. So to me, that is what's changing the way that marketing NFTs are done. And I'm briefing over it, of course. And to me, that's like scale and intimacy. You think of also an example of a product NFT that could happen, but in terms of a trend, let's talk about how Lululemon has the new mirror. They're a product company, right? That's creating trust with people through scale and intimacy. They've got a community that you can connect with. It's very human because you're no longer working out on your own. They were selling products. They never had any of those components. They also created subscriber, more value. And it's transformational because of the journey that you're able to take them on. So again, the trust economy, take the same filter. I'm going to skip through these and just go to this because marketing is really important for you guys. NFTs.
Scott, we don't have a lot of time left, so if you could be trying to wrap it up in the last few minutes here.
Okay, I will.
5 minutes? Is that cool?
5 minutes is cool.
You got it, boss. Thank you. Sorry.
You got it, you guys. Okay, so attraction. Think of, there's an NFT that came out for Patron. And what they did was they created a limited edition that you can buy, but you only can get it if you actually have an NFT. They're creating demand. They're creating value on top. It's not a piece of art. They created a piece of value for you to be able to do it. And I recently purchased a new Porsche 911, but I was told that it's going to take me 2 years to be able to wait for it to come off the line and do European delivery. But if I had bought an NFT, if they'd offered me an NFT and someone else had an NFT that was in front of me, that was only a year and a half out, I would have paid more for that NFT access so I could skip ahead to get my Porsche sooner. Just a way of thinking about how NFTs can be applied to marketing. So again, the same filter. How does it apply to human need? How does it apply to these different sort of components? If you're really interested in NFTs and how marketing can be applied, on March the 22nd, tomorrow, go to Groundswell TV on my YouTube, and Gary and I do a deep dive on how marketing NFTs, how they're being applied to the creator economy, creator coins, and all the rest. And it's a full, incredible hour and a half. It's going to probably be one of the most trended podcasts I'm going to drop. But it's a YouTube. It's not even dropped as a podcast yet. I'm just offering this because I knew I was doing this talk and they didn't release it. So I made it into a premiere just for you guys here at the Next MBA. Okay, I'm wrapping up here, guys. So the transformation economy, as I mentioned, is you think of the Lululemon and the mirror. What are they doing there? They're creating levels of impact. They're actually focusing not just on moving a product, not just changing to be a better athlete, but they're actually transforming the way that you want to work out because of their system that they're providing. And I call it move, change, transform. Those are the components. I don't need to dive into it because if you go to Groundswelling, I dived into it at great length. Same filters. And the last piece I'll kind of wrap up on is this. You need to have a North Star. Your North Star is, what are your values? Your North Star is, what is your brand's values? Your North Star is, what do I have energy for? What is my focus? Going back to the very beginning, what are those things? I want you to have that North Star because that's not that immovable object in these pendulum shifts that you can to keep you sort of steady and focused on what you're doing. Focus on the balance, like where are you fitting with those with your North Star? If you're interested, you can go to wavelengthsweekly.com. I'm going to be talking about each one of these in great lengths over a course of a multiple. It's on LinkedIn. I'm launching the next article drop will be on the 22nd as well. And it's really about talking about those things. And it's just on LinkedIn. It's just the articles I'm writing. So I don't review what it's like to be a mindful marketer, but just saying this is that I'm also launching a mindful marketer collab, which is kind of ties into this trend of working with Guru Singh. And what we're doing together is Guru Singh and I is we're basically creating where ancient wisdom meets marketing. And we're creating a course, something that's never been created before. We're collaborating. We're doing a whole bunch of stuff. We might even adding some NFT concepts to it. So really look forward to that. We'll be hearing more about that in the future. So here's your assignment. How can you build intimacy at scale with your community or audience? Think about it. If you think about all the things that we said, this is the one that spans so many different human needs. It spans so many of those different balancing points, and it follows the different trends. How can you, and so you think of NFTs, they can build intimacy and scale. That's why right now I think they're absolutely exploding. It's just one of those components. Same with audio. Next assignment, what could you do to build a deeper trust with your brand or your personal brand? Think about now, not where the puck is, but where it's going. What can you do to create trust? What can you do to build and anticipate trust, right? And the last thing is, how can you anticipate your audience needs? So critical. If you can anticipate what they want next, that means you know so much about them. You have so much empathy for them. You understand their human needs. This is where I believe the trend of marketing is going. And some of these things are the platforms and the tech. Everybody gets caught up on those things. If you look at the underlying behavior of why those are going to be powerful, which ones, it allow you the lens to go, which one do I put more energy on and focus on when you think about, does it help me anticipate their needs? So in closing, you know, my aim in life in this business and this whole concept and the training I do is about transforming business as usual into business as beautiful, because I believe that we can change marketing. You can change marketing. We are agents of change together to create a world where marketing isn't interruptive, it's not annoying, it's not eye pollution. It's a beautiful experience from the moment you start to the very end till you want to be sharing and creating more experiences and sharing with other people. So with that, mahalo. Thank you.
Great work as always, Chris. Thanks a lot. Let's get right into it then. I got a really good question from Julia Spence here. Do you think that the pandemic negatively affected our ability to trust? Who do you think people can still trust? People don't believe in science and data, so what can we use to generate that trust?
That's a really, it's okay. I look like a Chris, but it's okay. So it's all good. Great question. You know, I got a really good point of view on this, is that the pandemic, in my mind, actually did something really important for us. It created more fear. It created more mistrust. All the things that she said is true. But something else that happened that's created the great resignation, that created the changes that I believe accelerated Tidal Shift. Tidal Shift, in my mind, I actually had this concept of this as a book, and I thought this would be like 5 years out. It's happening now. It's because of the pandemic, and here's why. Think about the pandemic. You were isolated from other people. You're filled with fear. There's all these things going on. What do you do when you're filled with fear? You're kind of elbows in. You want to interact with people who you trust. You're craving connection. You're creating human interaction because it was taken away from you, right? If something is always there, you don't miss it until it's taken away, right? So we now feel that feeling, and that I believe that what that's done is it's created more desire and to really lean into creating human connections with people you trust. So I think it's like really created more of these tribes and communities of trust together. In that, it's also, like I said, the darkest hour is I believe that this mistrust and the lack of a desire to sort of follow what they call science or whatever is, I think that what's happening is the reason why people don't trust science is because there's conflicting and misinformation. Blockchain's going to solve that. Think of this. If I post something that's supposedly a fact, and I knew there was permanent record about the fact that I posted and where it came from, it's going to limit the amount, or people can just go, oh, I want to see that information, where did it come from? You're going to be able to create with transparency. You're going to be able to figure out what that is. And so people are going to be making more informed decisions on the blockchain. I believe that is what's emerging. The fact that the reason that the pandemic and all this mistrust it sounds terrible to say, but I'm glad it's here. I believe it's going to give birth to these people are going to solve these problems for the very reason that your person was asking. That is going, it's very frustrating. That frustration, the friction, is what's going to be solved. The underlying human behaviors, the underlying economic factors are going to lead to what I believe is a beautiful outcome.
Great, thank you so much. Can you provide a good example of human content?
YouTube, TikTok.
Okay.
Like, really? Like, yeah, I'm not trying to answer that one. That was like, human content is really, sometimes it's not scripted. I'm unscripted, you know what I mean? Like, I think that makes it more human. If I just read my slides and I had this thing all prepared, it wouldn't feel as human, right? So, I mean, sure, I have my thoughts. I did put a plan together, but for the most part, I kind of went with my script. That feels more human.
Great. It's hard to find questions in here. They're just compliments to you, Scott. Great job. Thank you, Scott. Thanks. Great insights. All this. This is awesome. Best talk of the day. Thank you, Scott. Scott is always amazing. Come on, guys. I got wavelengths, question mark.
So wavelengthsweekly.com. It's on LinkedIn. And basically the idea is getting on the same wavelength and looking at new wavelengths and going, oh, maybe that wavelength is something I need to sort of get on that wavelength. So that's the concept of it. It'll be on LinkedIn. It'll be my weekly publication that I write about it. Awesome.
Oh no, yeah, we really don't have many questions here. That was the end of it.
This happened the last two times.
Yeah, no, I feel so stupid for trying to push you to finish quickly to get to the questions. Okay. There was one in the beginning that I didn't go over because I thought you probably got into it. Can you give examples of what the right levers are to pull to become an outstanding marketer? Kind of general.
Yeah, I think that if you're talking about what are the levers, I think that first is, and like at the very beginning, I said energy and focus. To me, it's like having the energy and focus on your practice, viewing yourself as being, I need to get a PhD in human behaviors, not just on, everybody gets a PhD on what's the algorithm going to do and Instagram. I would have you look at the very basis of what I was saying is to become outstanding is not just to identify the pattern. It's also to differentiate which patterns are more powerful than the other. But an outstanding is creating your own patterns. When you get to that comfort level, you get to that uncomfortable level, you get comfortable with being uncomfortable. That is the goal. When you become outstanding, you get uncomfortable. You get comfortable with being uncomfortable, but you've tested and tried, you've done the homework, you've come to the leading edge of what is known, and you're now leading what is unknown for your business, your brand. This to me is, if you think of herd mentality, many people go, well, this is what I heard what to do, so this is what I'm doing. That's like throwing up your hands. What kind of marketer are you if you're doing that? The best outstanding marketers are ones that go, this is what I learned. We're going to try this. And you're pushing it and you're coming back to us and going, here's what I tried. To me, that is what I believe an outstanding marketer is that you're not just doing it to push the success of your brand and your marketing. You're doing it to better everyone else and you're sharing what you learned.
Okay, great. We got a couple more coming in here.
Good.
Blockchain is shaping a new economy and enabling greater participation by all people. Do you agree that it can help small businesses in developing countries?
Oh yeah, I 100%. I mean, you know, some of the challenges with developing countries is there's been, like, for example, it's going to transform land title in third world countries, because that's actually been the cause of many wars is you know, people getting usurped from their land, and the records were destroyed, and then, you know, all these sort of things. On the blockchain, all that will be transparent and it'll be available. The other is globalization and access. So if you think of trust, sometimes, like, you think of cross-border trust is like, I don't know if that will go through or whatever. On the blockchain, there'll be different ways that we haven't even imagined that allow me to feel that level of trust, because it doesn't matter where you are. I know that if I make that transaction, the blockchain is whatever I've agreed to, it's the transaction occurred. So I think it's going to be an accelerator for content creators. It's going to be an accelerator for small business. And I believe it's going to be an interesting outcome, and very difficult for the large brands to follow what I think small businesses will be able to do that they can't do.
Your shift in the trust and expectation / anticipation in the European parentheses, also worldwide space in the light of the recent events?
Repeat that one?
Yes, sir. Do you see a change or a shift in the trust and expectation / anticipation in the European space or worldwide in the light of the recent events?
The recent events being the Russian-Ukraine conflict?
They didn't say specifically, but I guess that probably would be the big event going on now. Maybe Corona, but yeah.
I don't know how to answer that question. Do I think the European, I mean, yeah, because they're under, if you think if we globally all shared this one experience, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, I was able to kind of communicate what happened with the pandemic. So if you think of what's happening to people that are being affected by this, they have a higher level of fear and different, but if you go back to the human needs, it's going to totally have an effect. To what extent, I don't know, but I believe that what's happening now and what you're seeing is some of these things like crowdfunding and you know, NFTs for support, for helping people and survivors and so forth. This is just giving birth and acceleration to people that they're going to give more, right? For example, because they know they can certify that it's going to the right place, as an example. Because there's been, I think, past conflicts and different problems that have gone on, there's been a lot of mistrust because you don't know where your money's going. So that could be one of them. That would be my one thought.
Right. Can you give us some examples of changes you did in your organization?
Some changes that I did in my organization. Yeah. I mean, testing and trying everything and changing one variable. I spent 10 years. That's all we did. Every single interaction, every single content, every single ad, we measured and we changed one thing, and we basically completely focused on the methodology that I call is RICE or ICE, as well as it's well known, which is, think of RICE as reach, impact, confidence, and ease. How many people does this on your North Star? If we're trying to succeed at whatever objective with my client, did we make the reach from 0 to 10? If it's 10, you did tons. If you did 0, you didn't reach anybody. Impact. What was the impact on that goal from 0 to 10? Confident. How confident were we that we could do this experiment? And what was the outcome of it? And then ease. How simple was it? And was it actually simple in the end? So to me, taking that sort of mind of research and innovation, that is something that I've constantly done, because right now I'm in pattern creation, not pattern identification. I still am, but I'm in all about creation now.
Great. We got one from Jeremy here. There's a 15-year-old book titled Groundswell on using social media and marketing. What do you think Groundswell means today? You talked about finding where the energy is. What's your process?
Yeah, so Groundswell today, it's a different book. I've actually read that book. Now, when I saw the title, it's funny because the publisher, I said, we can't really do a book. And they go, there's lots of books that have the same title. But really, the Groundswell to me is really based on this idea of exponential growth. It's really about making impact. And what came to bear, why the name even came about, is the study of waves. And the fact that a groundswell is a storm that's a far off storm that's in the middle of the ocean. And initially that wave, that storm, if you're thinking of the water, it has all this sort of chaotic waves and so forth. It's kind of bouncing around. And when the storm has a sustained focus direction, what happens is these chaotic waves start meeting up and they start creating a little bit more of surface area, which then accelerates, creates exponential growth, and has a massive amount of energy. And from the air, it looks like corduroys or soldiers marching. And as it gets closer to the bottom of the roof, the shelf of the continent, it starts changing. So it sort of movement starts first, then it changes into these swells, and then it transforms into waves. And as a surfer, they're the most powerful, consistent waves. And that's an analogy for exponential energy. It's an analogy for powerful. It's also an analogy for an uprising. So if you think of all this technology, the NFTs, you're looking at the creator economy, these are all groundswells, these technologies, this movement. So my methodology is about looking at really the bottom up. What was a sustainable growth that creates exponential energy and less marketing over time? And that's what a groundswell is.
What's your best strategy to cut through the marketing and advertising clutter?
What's my best, like in terms of information? Is that what they're saying?
They're saying, what's your best strategy to cut through the marketing / advertising clutter, ?
So here's one angle. Remember I said personal brand, point of view? Look for someone that's actually not parroting a point of view. They have a point of view that based on testing. They have a point of view based on experience. They have a point of view based on information or research. Like you're looking at people that have a point of view, and it may conflict with yours, but if they share the same values, that's kind of where I would be looking at getting through the clutter, because there's all this clutter in different directions. It's called disparate energies going different directions. Well, you should do this, you should do this. Is you start going, well, one of the ways to sort of go through that culture and filter it is going, does this idea, concept, individual actually align with my North Star, my values? If it doesn't mean it's a throwaway. Just kind of, it's like it might not have the same energy that you want to put to it. You want to look at what is those factors that you want to be looking at. So my eyes and my brain, as I'm looking through all the clutter, and I'm looking, is it sustainable? That's my question, my filter. I ask myself I remember I said before, ask yourself, is this sustainable? I've been living and breathing that. That's why I came up with the concept of groundswell, going, is this sustainable? Because I'm a recovering 10x grow at any cost growth hacker. I was chasing all the algorithms, like whack-a-mole, what's going on next, and realizing it wasn't sustainable. And many of you are feeling the same way. You're exhausted because you're trying to follow the different things. So start thinking a little differently. So for me, it's both, is it sustainable? Because that's a value I have. It's a focus I have. And so I look through that filter, and then I question everything with a critical and creative mind, and sometimes test things to see if it's valid.
We got one final one here. Content is king. In percentage, how much would you give it versus other elements in the marketing strategy?
So he's already declaring content is king?
Right.
Okay. But he's not far from being inaccurate, but I would say context plays a role in that as well, right? Because content without context it's like, the difference between, what's the difference between lettuce and garbage? Timing, that's another context, right? So if you think of content, it's really context is where it's going in my mind. And content that is something that I've already learned or understood, or I've seen repeatedly, or doesn't feel real, it's not really content is king. So it's like, what is relevant to me? People respond what they relate to. And it got a deeper level, people respond what's personal to them. And so I believe that the content marketing industrial complex is dying a death because so many people are publishing content. That's why we're having the collapse of attention. So what do I pay attention to? Things that are personal to me, things that are in context, things that relate to me and hopefully connect with me.
Well, that's kind of the last question that we have here. You've done this before, so I just kind of, for the last, couple minutes here, I'd like to give you the floor if you have any closing comments, any recommendations of further education material, books, websites, or otherwise, personal things you want to promote for yourself. Please, the floor is yours, sir.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, I think I'd have you leaving with the very sort of like the tagline that I've been espousing, which is, transforming business as usual. Like transform yourself as marketer as usual into a marketer that looks for elegant solutions. right? Elegant solution is something that's effective. It's beautiful. It's like, intelligent. It takes time to find those solutions. So I'd have you looking at people that are actually in that direction. They can guide you, but you can take pieces of it. Take what you like, leave what you don't. Even the conversation I'm having here today is so, I just have you look at my podcast, groundswellpodcast.com. I interview people with the same question. Is it sustainable? I'm asking a lot of these questions. That would be one resource that I'd have. I'd have you also follow The Tilt with Joe Paluzzi. He's incredible. Gary Club, if you're interested in NFTs, he's the one that, and if you don't know who he is, listen to my video of premiering tomorrow that he'll explain, and you'll fall in love with. This is a guy you want to follow to really understand how NFTs and marketing connect. That would be another one. And lastly, I'd say I myself have a community of like-minded individuals with different groups inside of it, from mindful marketers to people that are just interested in the data. And I would just go to groundswellinnercircle.com, and it's my community. You just got to fill out a little introduction to yourself. And right now I'm offering it for free. Eventually it'll be not free, but for you, all listeners, if they want to join, they can do that for free.
And when is your book coming out? Your next one?
In summer. This summer it's coming out.
Awesome. Well, as usual, you knocked it out of the park, Scott. Thank you very much for being our closer once again today, and we look forward to having you back again in the future.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Take care, boss. Adios.